Hello, the story that I will tell you today took place in Wisconsin. Is the 30th state of the United States and is known for its cheese production. In Wisconsin, there is a city named Milwaukee. This is the largest city in the state and is the economic center of the state and has been voted the best city in the Midwest since the late 1980s. By the early 1990s, there had been more than a dozen disappearances in Milwaukee, all of which the missing men are all gay men. Police suspect there is a local serial killer. Due to lack of clues, the police could not find the perpetrator until one day. Two patrol officers accidentally discovered a series of shocking cases in the United States. Next, we will go back in time to July 22nd, 1991, July 22, 1991. It was a Monday morning at 11:30 p.m. and two police officers were on patrol. A routine patrol on the streets of Milwaukee was approaching an apartment building on 25th Street in the north part of the city when suddenly, however, they encountered an African-American man rushing out of the building wearing nothing but handcuffs. He quickly ran straight to the two police officers and panicked, saying that someone was going to kill me at first. The two policemen thought the man was a pervert and restrained him, but he quickly explained that, "My name is Chaz Edwa. That night I went to the bar to drink with two guys. During that time, I met another white gay man. He was very generous and priced well. $100 to invite a few people to my apartment to drink and take some sexy pictures, but only me. Of the three people invited, I agreed to the above deal, so I followed him into the apartment in the above building. Entering the house, I vaguely smelled a very unpleasant stench. Under the living room floor were several bottles of hydrochloric acid, and on top of it, the TV was showing a horror movie, and I felt a little strange, so I asked. The other side said about the bottle of acid. The bottle of acid was used to clean the dirt on the floor. After a while of talking, he handcuffed me. I know some customers. The guy often has strange habits, so I didn't react much and asked him why he did that. Said it was his personal preference, so hoped I could cooperate then. We went into the bedroom together. Unexpectedly, the smell in the room became even stronger. In the corner of the room, there was also the blue plastic bin. I guess the smell is coming from there, even though I hate it. The smell was bad, but I still cooperated, lying on the bed taking pictures. At that time, he suddenly took out a knife and threatened me, forcing me to take off all my clothes. I suddenly felt something was wrong, but with my hands cuffed, it was hard for me to escape while taking them off. Take off my stuff. I asked him to take off his hand gate to show me I was very cooperative with him. Let go of my guard and put the knife down and walked around the room humming a song after I took off my clothes. He slowly came closer and put his head on my chest and slowly told me that he would eat my heart. After hearing that, I felt extremely terrified. I could predict what would happen. Fuang may be a bit perverted, but I didn't expect him to be this perverted. At that moment, I pretended to smile, both joking and calmly insisting that we are friends while thinking of ways to. Out of the difficult situation above, I saw that the apartment door was not locked. This was my chance to pretend to be suggestive. Invite him to the living room, drink a few glasses of wine. Then, I continue to go to the bathroom and wait until I lost my guard after leaving the bathroom, and while he wasn't paying attention, I threw it at him. A hard punch to the face, then rushed out the door and ran out really fast. Luckily, I happened to saw two police here. After hearing Cha's story, two police followed him into the apartment and up to apartment 213 on the first floor. 2 minutes after knocking on the door, a white man opened the door after being called. When asked, he admitted to the police that he was the one who had just handcuffed Chelsea, but left the keys on the table next to the bed because Chelsea mentioned a white man using stars. threatened him, so two policemen very carefully and calmly entered the apartment to check. Let's take a look at the apartment map. This is the entrance and next is the living room. Near the door has a kitchen area, then the sofa and TV. This is the bathroom, the living room, and finally a bedroom. After two policemen entered the bedroom, they saw the bedside table drawer was ajar, and when they glanced inside they saw some photos of the body. Fragmented people, they believe the above photos are all real. They immediately withdraw gun and subdued the man, then called the police force for support. After controlling him, two police continued. They continued to check the rooms carefully when they opened the refrigerator in the living room and saw a freshly severed head inside. The life of an African-American man and some other men. When he saw what was discovered, he quickly said that I did all those things and I deserve to die a horrible death. Moments later, the private police force quickly arrived at Yen Triuong and immediately blocked off the entire apartment and the scene. The official investigation began in the apartment above the kitchen, where there were many. In addition to the head, two hearts and part of an arm were also found in the refrigerator after being cooked. The other body parts were all wrapped in plastic bags. Police found a total of 11 skulls, including 4 skulls. In the living room, 7 boxes of soy sauce. In the bedroom, some boxes of soy sauce are bleached and 1. The painted number in the bedroom has a blue plastic bucket in the letter bucket filled with acidic liquid, along with several other dismembered body parts belonging to 3 different men. Police also found 2 sets of complete human bones, a pair of severed hands, 2 male genitals, and many other body parts in the apartment they left. A total of 74 photos were found documenting the dismemberment of various victims, the scene of a horrific crime. It was a horror beyond words. One forensic officer who worked on the case after the inquest described it as more like a surgical museum than a crime scene. The man's identity is quickly revealed. His name is Zafar Lion Dahmer, born on May 21, 1960 at Moki. His father is Loner Herbert Dahmer. He is a chemistry doctor. His mother is Joy Annett, was a housewife. After Jeffrey was born, his mother suffered from depression. He had postpartum depression and was lying in bed all day. His father had not finished school yet, so most of his time was spent at school. Neither he nor his wife had much time to care for Jeffrey when he was young. Jeffrey was very obedient and understanding when he grew up. His mother's condition was, the more serious it gets, the more the family intends to do something stupid. Every time the father comes home, the couple argues. Jeffrey's harsh childhood was marked by constant, violent arguments between his parents until he was 5. In 1964, at the age of 4, Jeffrey had to undergo inguinal hernia surgery. Since then, he became self-centered and didn't want to communicate with others. Once he saw his father taking out animal bones. Doing experiments at home made him feel very interested. Since then, he started searching for animal bones in the forest, but he also often caught live animals and pressed them with his hands into their bodies to locate the bones. As the bones emit each movement, he will be very excited. In October of the year, in 1966, when Jeffrey was 6 years old, the whole family moved to Dollet Town, Ohio to live. Here the mother gave birth to a baby brother for Jeffrey and named him David. This is the name Jeffrey chose for himself. His younger brother that same year also found a job at a research institute in Ohio for 2 years. Next, the Jeffrey family moved several times, and finally they chose to settle in the town of Bass Summit County, Ohio home. Their home was a 2-story house located in a quiet residential area. Jeffrey was only 8 years old at the time and often wandered around and finally found an abandoned cabin in Jeffrey Street. He loved the cabin so much that he turned it into his secret base. Jeffrey regularly search and collect insects or small animals and put them in jars and keep them in the room. His base 2 years later in 1970, when Jeff was 10 years old at a meeting. When the family saw a pile of chicken bones left on the table, Jeff curiously asked his father what would happen if the bone was put in bleach. The father was very happy that his son asked such a good question, and he showed him how to bleach and preserve animal bones safely. Since then, Jeff started collecting animal bones on the road or in the air, and then brought back to base to share all the organs and preserve the bones for some mischief. Jeff was not satisfied with just searching for small animal carcasses. He once killed a dog with his own hands, then cut off the head and used a stick to pierce through and stick the remaining part into the forest floor. He then continued to hammer the nail into a tree trunk and then slowly admired his masterpiece. Even excitedly called a few friends to come see, and said that he accidentally discovered the disease that same year. The mother's condition became more serious, and she tried taking medicine many times but was unsuccessful. The father is often away from home because of his busy work. It seems like Jeffrey. He never felt his parents' love for him during his childhood, but he seemed to get used to it. With that being said, in 1974, 14-year-old Jeffrey entered school. High school, the rebellious student age, not receiving attention from his parents, made Jeffrey develop a negative, depressed mentality. Seeing that no one understood him, he started to seek relief from his sadness. Often hid it in his clothes. When he went to school, Jeffrey was not good at communicating and had very few friends, but he was very wanting to get attention from others since childhood. Jeffrey played some tricks like catching people before an epileptic patient falls to the ground convulsing and making sounds like a sheep, and so on, to attract attention. Other people in the school. Jeffrey's actions attracted the attention of his classmates, and he quickly became a clown in everyone's eyes, but Jeffrey doesn't care. He just needs, "I can attract other people's attention, that's all." In the following days, Jeffrey continued to make things another mischievous student in school. Academically, he only liked biology and was obsessed with dissecting animals. Besides, he was no longer interested in other subjects at that time. He was in puberty, but he had no interest in women. Instead, he liked men during his time at school. Also had a few boyfriends, but they broke up soon after. He began to fantasize about having a boyfriend who could completely submit to him and never leave his side. One time, Jeffrey accidentally saw a muscular man jogging on the street. At that time, he felt very excited and wanted to have sex with that man. A few days later, he took a baseball bat and hid in a dark room with the intention of attacking the jogging man he had noticed before. However, that man did not appear. This was also Jeffrey's first attempted crime. Came 3 years later in 1977, when Jeffrey prepared to. He graduated from high school, but his academic performance was very poor. If he continues like this, it may affect his future. Because of his worries, his parents hired a private tutor for him. At home at that time, his parents started to fight more often, and sometimes they fought a year later, and in 1978 their marriage still did not end. Jeffrey was then a young man who had just turned 18 and was about to graduate from high school. He invited his mother to his graduation ceremony, but she refused, saying that his father's presence was enough. Both parents were equal. She didn't care much about him, but they still fought for custody of their youngest son, David. In the end, the mother won. She sued her and her younger brother to return to Wisconsin, while Jeffrey lived with his father for a long time. The continuous unpleasant experiences made Jeffrey extremely shocked. He felt that his parents did not love him at all. Only loved his younger brother. Jeffrey became an alcoholic and was drunk all day until June of that year. 1978, 3 weeks after Jeffrey graduated from high school that day while driving. On the street, he saw a shirtless man walking on the street. That made him very interested, so he went there, slowly parked next to the man, and asked if he needed a ride. The man happily got on the bus. Through the conversation, he learned that the man's name was Step Marek. He was on the bus. On the way to the concert at Lockwood Corner, Jeffy said it was still early and the concert hadn't started yet, so I went home for a few drinks afterwards. He will drive him to the concert. Stephen happily accepted after both of them. They went to Jeffrey's house and started drinking and talking for a while. Stephen kept talking about some women. Although he is beautiful, Jeffrey is not interested in women. He only cares about Stephen in front of him. However, Jeffrey knew that if he asked to be the other person's boyfriend, he would definitely be rejected. He felt very disappointed. Hopping about that, after the two talked for a few hours, Stephen saw the fireworks show was coming up, and he asked permission to leave. But Jeffy didn't want him to leave while the other party was off guard. He took out a 4.5 kg dumbbell and hit Stephen twice on the head, causing him to faint. The opponent fell into a coma. Then Jeffy played with his neck with a dumbbell. After finishing, he took off all of Stephen's clothes and did something to the body. The next day, Jeffy curiously buried his body in the basement of his house and buried it in the backyard for a few weeks. Later, he saw that the children who often played in that area felt unsafe, so he dug up the body and took it. The flesh from the body was dissolved in strong acid. Then the bones were pounded with a hammer and placed in a place near his house for a month. After the incident in July 1978, the father waited until he got home and discovered he drank at home all day, so he reached out to some connections to get him something to drink. Study at Ohio State University. Ohio State University is known as a public IV, is one of the university's top public schools in the Great Lake region of the United States. When studying here, Jeffrey, he had no interest in studying and was still addicted to alcohol. One time, his father personally came to visit him at school and saw him in the dormitory. His house was filled with abandoned boys. That made his father extremely disappointed. In the end, Jeffrey dropped out of school after only 3 months. In January 1979, at the age of 19, Jeffrey joined the United States Army and became a doctor. At the suggestion of his father, Jeffy was deemed unfit for service while in the Army. Jeffy joined the military because of alcoholism and other problems and was discharged early. He felt that if he waited to go home, he was sure to be scolded by his father, so on March 24, 1981, Jeffy ruled. He decided to go to Miami, Florida, and stayed in a local motel and found a job. Working at a fast food restaurant on the beach outside of work, he spends most of his time drinking. He was in his room for 6 months, and in September 1981, his girlfriend got the news of her son. I was discharged but not home yet. He called and asked Jeffrey to return to Ohio immediately. When he returned home, Jeffrey continued to live with his father and stepmother. 2 weeks after returning, police detained him for 10 days for being drunk and causing trouble during a period when his father asked him to do all the housework. In addition, he was forced to go out to find more work for the purpose of he wanted to help him stay busy and forget his lazy habit, but his idea was not very promising. 3 months later, and in December 1981, the father said Jeffrey was very obedient. My grandmother, Catherine Dahmer, said that since she was little, the two of them had a special relationship. The relationship was so good that he decided to take Jeffrey to her house in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The father also asked her to persuade his nephew to find a stable job and stop drinking, because he had nothing to do. So after moving to a new place, he listened to the housekeeper and occasionally went to church with her until 5 1982, a year after moving in with Mrs. Jephi, found a job as a doctor. The doctor drew blood at a local plasma center, but a few months later on August 0. In 1982, he was convicted of exposing his private parts to children and women he was arrested for. He was arrested and fined $50 and fired by his boss for 2 years. Next, Jephi lived with his grandmother's theme fund until January 19, 1985. 25-year-old Jeffy found another job as a bartender one day when, while studying at the public library, he was handed a piece of paper by a man who asked him if he wanted to find a partner. Male or not, Jeffrey saw the paper's silent no answer, however. That awakened the long-hidden desire inside him. From then on, Jeffy no longer wanted to hold back. He suppressed himself and began frequenting gay bars and bathhouses, which he once stole. A ghost lurks in the store and hides in his closet afterward. Was discovered by his wife and asked to be picked up every night. He often brought home a male friend he met at a bar to spend the night in. Every time they have sex, he feels like his partner keeps moving, making him feel very uncomfortable. He wants to control. Completely opposite, so thought of a way like after each time bringing a lover home. He always put sleeping pills or magic potions in the opponent's cup and waited until the opponent, when the other person is in deep sleep, he will start having sex on top so the other person cannot move freely, and he also can do anything they like to control them, absolutely. However, this is not the key point of these strange thoughts. His sick egg was getting worse than he had seen in the newspaper. News of the death of an 18-year-old man. After knowing where the young man was buried, he took a shovel out cemetery late at night and decided to dig up the man's body for pleasure, but after digging for a few, he found the ground too hard, so he gave up that crazy idea on September 0th. In 1985, Japfi was again convicted for exposing her private parts in public. Sentenced him to 1 year of probation in November 1987. G-Fi, 27 years old, accidentally met a man in the bar. That man named Step 2 the third victim. 2 is a Michigan man, Jeffrey enough. He goes to the hotel to put sleeping pills in the drinks and waited for him to pass out, then had sex the next morning. After waking up, he saw Step lying motionless beside him with many bruises on his chest and blood coming from his mouth. He was no longer breathing. He didn't want to kill the other party, but the situation couldn't be saved, so he decided to buy a large suitcase to pack. The body was put in a suitcase and brought to her house to hide for a period of time. The crazy thoughts started to creep into his mind a week later when he dismembered the body in his grandmother's basement. By chopping the body into pieces and putting them in plastic bags and using a hammer to smash the bones into small pieces, he had to lose. It took him 2 hours to process the body. He processed all the parts except the head. He threw it all in a trash can. 2 weeks later, he took out the decomposed head and examined it carefully. Industrial bleach is alkaline and mixed with bleach to cook the head, then remove all the parts and keep the skull. But he found that the skull became very brittle after being treated that way and would break if not careful, so he decided to crush the skull and throw it away. 2 months later, on January 16, 1988, he found another target. He met a man named Jam Dog T. The third victim was in a bar where he invited him to his house to take pictures for $50. He still uses the old way of drugging and making the person unconscious, then strangling to death. Then he uses similar way to dispose of the body and leave only the head. The head was processed by him and finally bleached into a skull for display. After all, he still feeling dissatisfied with what he had done. He used the same trick again to commit many crimes. Even worse, his victims were all homosexuals he encountered in bars. Many times he successfully preserved the skulls of his victims, most of which were left with some white cast. He painted the pattern and color of the mural until April 1988, when Jeffy was 28 years old. Lured a man home. However, this time he made a small noise in the room just as he was about to kill him. As he was about to harm the man, his grandmother's voice rang out from outside the door. "Is that you?" Jeffrey, after hearing his grandmother's call, he felt that if he reached out to her, the man on her would probably find out, so he gave up on killing her and secretly threw him in front of the bakery's door at midnight 5 months later, because he often drunkenly talked and brought friends home. His house at night, so his room often creates an unpleasant smell, his grandmother could not stand, so she angrily kicked him out. He left home and then rented an apartment in an apartment building on 24th Street in North Mookie until September of that year. 1988, a dozen years after moving into the apartment, he was accused of using my thigh and seduced a 13-year-old boy into having sex after being arrested by police, a specialist. The psychologist conducted a psychological evaluation on him, and he was diagnosed with schizoid personality disorder. He was said to be an impulsive person who does not trust others and lacks confidence in life. January 1989, 4 months later, Jeffrey's trial began, and he was convicted. Second-degree trespassing. However, sentencing is not until May 2020. 1989 was just implemented, during which time he will be detained for 2 months after being arrested. He was detained until March 1989, when he was given 10 days to rest. Easter, and returned home to unexpected loved ones just 5 days after being released. On parole on March 25, 1989, he murdered another model. Lai, 24 years old, named in Tunisia, was the third victim. The next morning, when his grandmother not at home, he dragged the body from the basement into the bathtub, chopped the victim into pieces. This time he gave it to the body parts in bottles for preservation, sealed in a wooden box too. The following month, on October 23, 1989, according to the previous trial, he was sentenced. 5 years probation. Initially, he was to serve a year in prison, but after only 2 months he was released, pardoned for good behavior in prison, and transferred to his grandmother's house to live. On October 14, 1990, 30-year-old Jeffy was again fired. Home with his collection of human parts, he later moved to an apartment on 25th Street in North Mookie. That's apartment number 23 at the beginning of the video. For 2 years here, he lived comfortably and freely. Because he was not under any supervision, he successfully committed 12 murders without being detected each time he committed the crime. All of them lured those men to the apartment, with the excuse of paying them to take revealing photos. After satisfying his vengeance and disposing of his victims' bodies, he always reuses the skulls as a way to celebrate. And turn them into a collection of strange moon ornaments in his house. He once used a microwave oven to try to dry the skull, but the skull exploded in the oven. Later on, Jeffy was no longer satisfied with just strangling his victim, but instead proceeded to drill a hole in his head. They injected acid or poured boiling water on it, thinking that doing so would cause the opponent falls into a zombie state. They are still weakly conscious but cannot resist. He believes that with the above method, he was able to completely control the enemy until the afternoon of October 26, 2008. In 1991, he invited a 14-year-old immigrant girl named Karak Shah Saman. This is the 13th victim, came to the house to take pictures. After taking pictures, he proceeded to drug her into his drink and waited until she passed out. Then he drilled a hole in his head and injected Maxit into it. After his boredom was over, he dragged him into the bedroom. In his bedroom, there was still the body of a man. He had died 3 days earlier, and his body was not dismembered that day for unknown reasons. What he suddenly lost interest, so he left the apartment and went to a bar to drink in the early morning. He returned, went back to the apartment, and was surprised to see the boy who had just been injected with acid, naked, talking with 3 girls downstairs. At that moment, he quickly walked over, put his arm around the boy's shoulder, and told him that that's my boyfriend and I'm taking him right now. 3 girls know. Believed him and called the police. A moment later, 2 policemen were at the apartment. Then Jay came out very calmly and said that Connor is my 19-year-old boyfriend. We just had a glass of wine. She must have been a little drunk and lost control, so He ran out of the house, but the 3 girls wondered why he had blood on him, and he did not appear to be drunk. However, the police did not believe his story. 3 girls, and told them to mind their own business not long after the 3 men. Paramedics arrived at the scene and examined the boy's injuries. One of them suggested that he should be taken to the hospital for immediate treatment, but their request was not supported by the police, so they left. Later, another police officer also arrived at the scene, and the 3 of them took the unconscious boy back to apartment 213 after entering the apartment. They smelled a strange smell, and the police did a cursory check inside the apartment, but found nothing to prove his relationship with the boy. Phi showed the police the intimate photo that he had just taken a picture with the boy in the afternoon, so the police believed his story and left the apartment after the police. He felt so angry that the boy had escaped that he continued. He injected more acid into his head and killed him. The next day, he asked his boss for leave. A day to spend time at home dissecting the boy's body. However, this is not a scary thing, yet after killing he will keep their hearts and livers and put them in the refrigerator to enjoy gradually. During the 2 years he lived here, his neighbors often complained about the unpleasant stench coming from the apartment. He could even hear the sound of the doorbell ringing, but every time they knocked on the door, he made up some excuse. To protect himself, until he was finally discovered, he had murdered a total of 17 people, the youngest being 14 years old, and the oldest is 36 years old. They are all African American, Asian, and Hispanic immigrants at a time when racial discrimination in America was very serious. Mookie was a member of the city is a public city with a large number of foreign immigrant workers. Perhaps that is why the target audience is. Jeffrey's pursuit of the hunt was not given much attention at the time, which aroused much anger among many people. Local people, 3 police helped take the immigrant girl back to the apartment. Maybe also being racist, they hesitated to believe the boy after seeing white man Jeffrey was forced 17. He was charged with first-degree murder, but he only pleaded guilty to 16 of those charges after the incident. Some racial conflict broke out, and people hated the evil Jeffrey so much that on January 13, 1992 cases were officially brought to trial during the trial to prevent the situation from getting worse. Dozens of security personnel used explosive shields to prevent the crowd from entering, which was a surprise. The concubine turned over his confession in court, and he refused to plead guilty. He told me, "I confessed during police interrogation, because at that time I was mentally disturbed and could not control myself." Jeffrey's defense attorney said he suffered from a mental disorder and was unable to control his behavior when committing the above crimes. In the final argument, the prosecutor argued that Jeffrey was the person. He was in complete control of his actions when he committed the crime. However, he murdered the victims and kept their bodies just to gain pleasure in order to control them. The crimes he committed caused confusion and serious harm to people in Mookie case, had to go through trial lasting 4 months until first zero. In 1992, the jury returned a unanimous verdict after deliberation, and the court sentenced defendant Jeffrey Dahmer to 16 life sentences, plus 941 years in prison. The second victim was one of 17 convicted of first-degree murder by North Korea. Fai claimed he had no memory of killing the second victim. Age 4. No unending had. No when I W up, he had a broken R here. Was bruised apparently, I had beat him to death with. My K after sentencing, he was imprisoned at Columbia Correctional Facility, one of the Wisconsin maximum security prison, where more than 800 male inmates are held when arrested. Fai was later put in solitary confinement to better adapt to life. In prison, the prison authorities allowed him to stay with other prisoners and participate in prison work in prison. He wished the warden would lend him a Bible after. He was approved to read the Bible every day and confess all his sins one day in an interview with the reporter. He replied that, when asked why the first crime happened in 1978 and the second crime 9 years later happened, he solved over. In Jeffrey's memory, he said he was always driven by the animal inside, and he didn't know how to get out of that. Reporter asked, "Why do you want to preserve the victim's boxes?" He replied that, "I am setting up a altar," and drew a manuscript on which there was a table with a candle at each end. The candle and the 10 heads in the middle of the above plan were just planned by him not long ago. If he is not arrested by the police, he will finish building the altar within the next 6 months. When asked which God was on the altar, he replied that it was me. Is where I meditated and gained strength until November 28, 1994. Jeffrey and 2 other inmates went into the bathroom to clean up the 3 people there. After 20 minutes, the prison guard still did not come out. Seeing that there was no movement, he went in to check. That's when they discovered Jeffrey, along with another spider, was lying in the same place. The 2 of them were injured in the head and lying motionless on the floor of their bathroom. Was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment shortly after. Fai was declared dead after being taken to the hospital 1 hours because the resuscitation process was unsuccessful, and the other person died 2 days later. They are Christopher Scav. He is schizophrenic. He said it himself. God asked me to do it, and I am doing the justice of God. That day, he hid an iron bar in his clothes and went into the bathroom together and attacked the 2 of them while they were off guard. Jai didn't even resist or make any noise when attacked Jeffrey, and extremely cruel and committed a series of heinous crimes that shocked the world after being exposed. In an interview, he once said, "I don't know if there is a God or a devil, but I think both. Both are affecting me." Today's video ends here, and see you in the next videos.